I'm Abigail, 28, and for 3 months, I'd been guarding a precious secret, my pregnancy. James and I weren't ready to tell my enormous, overwhelming Italian-American family yet. So, when Mom invited us for a small family dinner, I was suspicious, but hopeful. As we walked up the driveway, cars lined the entire street. My stomach dropped. Opening the front door revealed 81 people packed inside and a giant banner proclaiming, "Welcome baby." I froze in the doorway as every head turned toward me. My private joy had become a public spectacle. If you're watching this right now, let me know where you're tuning in from. Click subscribe if you've ever had your family completely your plans, and hit that like button if you're ready to hear how I navigated this absolute chaos. This story is all about boundaries, expectations, and finding your voice when you're drowning in well-meaning family love. Growing up in a large Italian-American family in Boston's North End neighborhood meant never experiencing true privacy. Our 3-bedroom row house somehow accommodated my parents, 3 older brothers, and me, plus a rotating cast of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who treated our home like a community center. My mother Sophia was the undisputed heart of this chaotic family system, a loving, warm woman who cooked enough food to feed an army daily and knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. My father, Joseph, a contractor who built half the renovations in our neighborhood, was more reserved but equally committed to our tight-knit family structure. He'd worked 12-hour days, then come home to host impromptu gatherings that lasted until midnight. In the Moretti household, family always came first, second, and third. My brothers, Michael, Anthony, and Vincent, established a protective barrier around me that would become both comfort and suffocation. Michael, the oldest at 35, followed my father into the construction business and married his high school sweetheart, Maria. They had 3 children who were the center of extended family attention, until my second brother, Anthony's wife, Rebecca, had twins. Vincent, just 2 years older than me, remained single but compensated with an overprotective attitude that scared away most of my high school boyfriends. Family gatherings in our home were legendary. Christenings, first communions, graduations, celebrations seemed to outdo the last in terms of food quantity, guest count, and decibel level. Privacy wasn't a concept we Morettis understood. When my cousin Gabriella announced her pregnancy 5 years ago, my aunts insisted on being in the delivery room. When my brother Anthony bought an engagement ring, the entire family accompanied him to the restaurant where he proposed. Boundaries simply didn't exist. I loved my family fiercely but always felt like a slightly different species. While they thrived on constant togetherness, I craved space to breathe. My childhood bedroom became my sanctuary, the only place I could read, draw, or simply exist without commentary or company. My mother viewed this desire for solitude as concerning, frequently checking if I was feeling okay when I'd retreat there. College selection became my first real act of independence. Despite tearful pleas to attend Boston University, where my brothers had gone, I chose Northwestern in Chicago. 1,000 miles of blessed distance. The day my parents and brothers dropped me at my dorm was a symphony of dramatic goodbye scenes that mortified my roommate and amused the entire floor. My mother called 3 times before they reached the airport. In Chicago, I discovered a version of myself that didn't need to shout to be heard. My graphic design talent flourished in the space and quiet. After graduation, I secured a position at a boutique design agency and established my adult life deliberately separate from Boston. I visited home for major holidays and called weekly, maintaining the minimum connection that would prevent a family intervention. 4 years into this carefully balanced arrangement, I met James Sullivan at a client meeting. Tall, thoughtful, and refreshingly straightforward. James came from a small Minnesota family that expressed love through comfortable silences and practical gifts. Our different family backgrounds became our favorite topic of conversation. His stories of quiet holiday dinners with just his parents and sisters sounded like fiction to me. After dating for a year, we moved in together. James had met my parents twice, once during their surprise visit to Chicago. They gave 2 hours notice, and once when we flew to Boston for Christmas. Both visits left him shell-shocked but gamely impressed by the Moretti love avalanche. My brothers had subjected him to the traditional interrogation, which he passed primarily by listening more than speaking, a skill the men in my family had never mastered. Then came the pregnancy test, 2 pink lines that appeared 3 months ago unplanned but not unwelcome. James and I spent a long weekend talking through all possible futures. We loved each other and eventually wanted children, though we'd planned on marriage first and perhaps another year of saving. But the tiny life already growing changed the timeline, not the destination. We made a decision together. We would keep the news private until we'd figured out next steps. No family announcements, no social media posts, just us processing this life-changing development in the peace we needed. I swore my best friend Natalie to secrecy after telling her. Needing one confidant besides James. My mother's weekly calls became increasingly difficult to navigate. Her sixth sense for family developments seemed to work across state lines. And her probing questions about my health, diet, and general glow made me nervous. I deflected with questions about my nieces and nephews, which always guaranteed 20 minutes of distraction. 3 months into the pregnancy, with our plans taking shape and my first trimester nearly complete, we decided we'd tell the family during the upcoming holidays. We'd fly to Boston, share our joy in person, and establish clear boundaries about our expectations going forward. It seemed like a solid plan. Then came my mother's call about a small family dinner she wanted to host when I visited home in 2 weeks. Something in her casual tone triggered my suspicion. Just the immediate family, she insisted. Your brothers and their wives, Nana and Nano, and maybe Aunt Rosa since she's visiting from New York. That's already 12 people, Mom, I pointed out. Not exactly small. For us, that's practically intimate. I just want to make your favorite lasagna. James likes my cooking, doesn't he? The conversation continued with oddly specific questions about food preferences and weather. I was feeling sensitive to any smells lately. I deflected as best I could, but a knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. Still, I reasoned, even if she suspected something, she couldn't possibly know for certain, and maybe I was being paranoid. Years of Moretti family surprises had left me with a mild case of PTSD. We'll be there, I promised. Mentally preparing for a slightly uncomfortable dinner with probing questions, but nothing we couldn't handle. Just 2 more weeks of privacy, then we'd share the news on our own terms. How wrong I was. The flight from Chicago to Boston was smooth, but my stomach wasn't. At 14 weeks pregnant, morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by a constant low-level hunger that the airplane pretzels barely touched. James held my hand during takeoff, his thumb gently stroking my palm in the reassuring rhythm that had become our silent communication of support. Last chance to practice your announcement speech, he whispered as we began our descent into Logan Airport. Though I still think we should open with James got me pregnant just to watch your brothers' faces. I laughed despite my nerves. If you value your life, never say those words in front of Vincent. He still thinks he's my personal bodyguard. We'd rented a car rather than subject James to the full Moretti greeting committee at the airport. The freedom to approach my childhood home at our own pace felt crucial, a small control measure before the inevitable family immersion. Driving through familiar neighborhoods toward the North End, I gave James a running commentary on landmarks from my youth, the park where I broke my arm at 9, the ice cream shop where my first boyfriend dumped me, the church steps where my cousin Lucia's wedding photos descended into chaos when 2 feuding aunts had to stand next to each other. Your family stories always involve someone yelling, James observed with a smile. Morettis don't recognize an emotion unless it's expressed at full volume, I confirmed. As we turned onto my parents' street, the first warning sign appeared. Cars. Not just a few extra vehicles for my brothers and their families, but a solid line of sedans, SUVs, and minivans stretching the entire block. That's weird, I said slowly, feeling my heart rate accelerate. Mom said small dinner. Maybe there's another event on the street, James suggested, but his tone lacked conviction. I instinctively touched my abdomen, still flat enough that my loose sweater revealed nothing. Let's park and see what's happening. We found a spot 3 houses down, and as we walked toward my parents' home, more red flags emerged. The porch lights were all on despite the afternoon sun. Multiple helium balloons were tied to the railing, straining against their ribbons in the November breeze. Abby, James said quietly, is that glitter on the walkway? I looked down to see a trail of silver and gold sparkles leading to the front door. My mouth went dry. Something's not right. James squeezed my hand. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell, though I could have walked right in as I'd done my entire life. Somehow, the formality of announcing our arrival seemed important. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the door swung open to reveal a scene from my deepest social anxiety nightmares. The entire front room of my parents' house had been transformed. Blue and pink streamers hung from every available surface. A tower of gift-wrapped packages occupied one corner, and dominating the far wall. A professionally printed banner proclaimed in foot-high letters, "Welcome baby." Below the banner stood what appeared to be the entire population of Boston's North End, my extended family, neighbors, family friends, and people I barely recognized. 81 faces. I would count them later, and photos turned toward me in unified expectation, beaming with excitement. My mother pushed through the crowd, arms outstretched and tears already streaming. "Surprise, Tessero," she cried. We couldn't wait to celebrate. The room spun slightly. I felt James stiffen beside me, his hand tightening around mine. A camera flash went off somewhere to my left. What? How? The words stuck in my throat. My brothers approached next. Michael carrying a glass of champagne that I obviously couldn't drink. Anthony already reaching to pat James on the back with congratulations, and Vincent studying my face with growing confusion. "Abby," Vincent said, his celebratory smile faltering, "are you okay? You look like you're going to pass out." I wasn't sure if it was the pregnancy hormones, the shock, or the crushing realization that our carefully guarded private joy had been co-opted, but I suddenly couldn't breathe properly. The room felt too hot, too crowded, too everything. "I think she's overwhelmed with emotion," my mother stage whispered to nearby relatives. "Pregnancy hormones are so beautiful." That broke my paralysis. "How?" I managed, my voice emerging higher than intended. "How do you all know I'm pregnant?" A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. My mother's smile dimmed slightly. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Natalie helped us plan everything. We've been working on this surprise for weeks." The crowd parted like the Red Sea to reveal my best friend, Natalie, standing by the refreshment table, her expression shifting from excitement to horror as she registered my reaction. "You told them." The betrayal felt physical, a punch to my already sensitive stomach. "I thought." Natalie stepped forward, her voice faltering. "When you said you were waiting to tell them, I assumed you meant in person. I called your mom to help plan a special announcement weekend. I didn't realize you had in tow. My God, Abby, I'm so sorry." The room had gone uncomfortably quiet. 81 people were witnessing what should have been an intensely private moment. I could feel curious eyes examining my still flat stomach, hear the whispered questions rippling through the crowd. "You've known for 3 months." My mother's hurt voice cut through the silence. "And you weren't going to tell us?" James stepped slightly forward, his arm moving protectively around my waist. "We were planning to share the news this weekend," he said calmly. "We wanted to tell you in person, but we were hoping for a more private setting." My 3 brothers were now focused entirely on James, their expressions shifting from celebration to something more territorial. Anthony cracked his knuckles unconsciously, a nervous habit that usually preceded confrontation. The tears I'd been fighting spilled over. Without another word, I turned and pushed back through the front door. Needing air, space, anything but the suffocating weight of 81 expectations. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, James trying to explain, and the unmistakable sound of a confused, disappointed crowd trying to figure out what had gone wrong with their surprise. I made it halfway down the front walk before I had to stop, gulping the cold November air. The pregnancy book I'd been reading warned against stress. This situation had bypassed stress and gone straight to emotional catastrophe. I heard the front door open again and braced myself for whoever was following me out. The sound of my mother's familiar footsteps approached, but I couldn't bring myself to turn around yet. "Abigail Marie," she said, using my full name as she had whenever I was in trouble growing up. "What is happening?" "Everyone is here to celebrate your blessing." "I didn't ask for this," I whispered, finally turning to face her. "I didn't want this." Her expression reflected genuine confusion, as if the concept of not wanting 81 people to celebrate your most private news was completely foreign, which, in the Moretti universe, it probably was. "What do you mean you didn't want this?" My mother's bewildered expression would have been comical in any other circumstance. "It's a celebration for the baby. Your baby." The front door opened again and Natalie slipped out, her face stricken. Behind her, I glimpsed James surrounded by my brothers, looking like a suspect being interrogated by 3 slightly different versions of the same detective. The emotional dam broke completely. I wanted privacy. My voice rose, despite my efforts to control it. "James and I have been processing this huge life change," making plans, adjusting to the idea of becoming parents. We deserve space to do that without the entire Moretti extended universe weighing in. My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. Family celebrates together, Abigail. Family supports each other. How could you keep something so important from us for 3 months? 3 months because I knew exactly this would happen. I gestured wildly at the house. The minute you found out, it wouldn't be my pregnancy anymore. It would become community property. Everyone would have opinions, advice, expectations. I wouldn't get to experience any of it on my own terms. Natalie stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. Abby, I swear I didn't understand. When you told me about the baby, you seemed so happy. I thought helping plan a special announcement would make you even happier. So you called my mother without asking me first. The betrayal still felt raw. I called to ask what weekend would work best for a family gathering, Natalie explained miserably. I just mentioned I was helping plan how you'd tell everyone about the baby. I had no idea she didn't know already. My mother picked up the thread. When Natalie said those words, I nearly dropped the phone. My first grandbaby. But I played it cool, didn't let on that this was news to me. I thanked her for helping plan the announcement and said I'd take it from there. She reached for my hands, which I reluctantly allowed. Sweetheart, I called Aunt Rosa, she called Aunt Lucia. Within an hour, the whole family knew you were coming home to share wonderful news. Everyone wanted to be part of the celebration, but that's exactly the problem. I pulled my hands away. Did anyone stop to consider what I might want? Did anyone think that maybe, just maybe, this intensely personal experience wasn't something I wanted to share with Uncle Sal, who I see once a year, and Mrs. Ginelli from 3 streets over, who used to babysit me 20 years ago? The front door opened again, and this time my father emerged, his expression concerned. What's happening out here? Everyone inside is confused. Your brothers are giving James the 3rd degree. Papa, I said, my voice breaking. Make them stop. James didn't do anything wrong. We just wanted to tell you our news ourselves, in our own way. My father, always the more sensitive barometer of emotions in our expressive family, studied my face carefully. You're really upset about this, aren't you? This isn't just surprise or pregnancy emotions. I'm devastated, I admitted, the word hanging heavily in the cold air. What should have been a special moment that James and I shared with you has turned into a spectacle. My father nodded slowly, then turned to my mother. Sophia, maybe we miscalculated here. Miscalculated? My mother looked genuinely baffled. We're celebrating new life. How can that be wrong? Because it wasn't your announcement to make, I said, my voice quieter but firm. It was ours. And now we can never get that moment back. My mother's expression shifted from confusion to hurt. I don't understand you sometimes, Abigail. Since when is family involvement something to avoid? When Michael's Maria was pregnant, she called me first, even before she told Michael. Rebecca FaceTimes me from her doctor's appointments. I'm not Maria or Rebecca. The frustration boiled over again. I've always been different, Mom. I've always needed more space, more independence. Why is that so hard to accept? The doorway filled again, as curious relatives began to spill outside, drawn by the raised voices. My Aunt Rosa approached cautiously. Is everything okay? Should the mother too be getting so upset? It's not good for the bambino. That was the last straw. Without another word, I turned and walked into the house, pushing past concerned relatives and ignoring their questions. I climbed the familiar stairs to my childhood bedroom, closed the door firmly, and sank onto the bed that still had the same lavender comforter from my high school years. I heard a gentle knock almost immediately. Go away, I called, not ready to face anyone else. It's me, came Natalie's voice, small and hesitant. Please, Abby, 5 minutes. Reluctantly, I opened the door. Natalie stood there with tissues and a glass of water, looking thoroughly miserable. I've never been more sorry about anything in my life, she said simply. I took the water but left the tissues. I trusted you. I know. She remained in the doorway, not presuming to enter. I completely misunderstood. I thought when you said you were waiting to tell them it was about wanting to do it in person. It never occurred to me you hadn't told them at all. Because you come from a normal family with reasonable boundaries, I said, sitting back on the bed. You can't possibly understand what it's like to be a Moretti. Once they know, they take over everything. I see that now, she said quietly. Downstairs is intense. How's James? I suddenly realized I'd left him to face the firing squad alone. He's holding his own. Your brother Vincent looks ready to throw him through a window, but your dad stepped in. She hesitated. Can I come in, please? I nodded, and she sat gingerly on the desk chair across from me. The thing is, she continued carefully, they really are just excited. Abby, your mom cried when we were planning this, happy tears. She kept saying how blessed you were, how wonderful James seems, how she's been praying for this. That doesn't make it okay to ambush us. No, it doesn't. Natalie agreed immediately. I think their hearts were in the right place, even if the execution was a complete disaster. Another knock at the door interrupted us. My mother's voice came through the wood. Abigail, we need to talk. I sighed deeply. Come. My mother entered, her makeup slightly smudged from crying. She looked older, suddenly uncertain in a way I rarely saw. Behind her, to my surprise, came James, looking shell-shocked but intact. Your young man here has been explaining some things to us, my mother said, her voice unusually subdued. About your feelings and your plans. James crossed immediately to sit beside me on the bed, taking my hand. You okay? He murmured. I nodded, grateful for his solid presence. The thing is, my mother continued, perching awkwardly on my childhood desk. I don't understand why you wouldn't want family involved in something so important. When I was pregnant with each of you children, my mother and sisters were my lifeline. They knew what to expect, what was normal, what wasn't. They took care of me, celebrated with me. Mom, I said carefully, that worked for you, but it's not what works for me. I needed time to process this enormous change without 20 different opinions about everything from baby names to birth plans. But why? The genuine confusion in her voice made me realize she truly couldn't comprehend my perspective. Because I'm terrified, okay. The admission burst out before I could filter it. I'm terrified of losing myself in motherhood the way I've seen happen to the women in this family. I've watched Maria and Rebecca completely disappear into being mothers, with everyone from you to Nana telling them how to raise their children. My mother looked stunned. They're wonderful mothers. Yes, they are, I agreed. But where are Maria and Rebecca in all that? When was the last time Maria painted, which she used to love? When did Rebecca last go anywhere without the twins? They're not people anymore, they're just mothers. The room fell silent as my words hung in the air. And I'm afraid, I continued, more quietly, that James will take one look at the Moretti motherhood machine, with its constant advice and criticism and involvement, and run for his life, because it's overwhelming, Mom. It's suffocating sometimes, even when it's well-intentioned. James squeezed my hand. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. My mother's expression had shifted from confusion to something more contemplative. I never thought of it that way, she said slowly. To me, family involvement is support, safety, love. It can be, I acknowledged, but it can also be overwhelming, especially when boundaries aren't respected. Like today, my mother said, understanding finally dawning. Like today, I confirmed. She was quiet for a long moment, then asked, what do you want to do now? Everyone is still downstairs. It was a fair question. 81 people had gathered to celebrate our news. However, misguided the execution. They brought gifts, prepared food, traveled from various distances, all with good intentions. I looked at James, who gave me a small nod of support. Whatever I decided, he would back me. I think, I said slowly, that I need a few minutes to collect myself and then we'll come downstairs. But I need you to understand something, Mom. This pregnancy, our baby, is not going to be a community project. James and I will make our own decisions. We'll welcome advice when we ask for it, but we need you to respect our choices. My mother nodded, though I could see the adjustment was difficult for her. I can try, she said, which was honestly more than I'd expected. And Natalie, I turned to my friend whose face was still etched with guilt. I forgive you. I know you thought you were helping. I'll make it up to you, she promised fervently. Okay then, I said, taking a deep breath. Give us 15 minutes and we'll come down. After they left, James pulled me into his arms. That was intense, he said against my hair. Your brothers asked if I was man enough to marry you multiple times in slightly different, threatening tones. Despite everything, I laughed. Welcome to the Morettis. Honestly, he pulled back to look at me. They're a lot, but I get it now. They love you fiercely. Boundaries are definitely needed, but there's something beautiful about how much they care. I studied his face, looking for signs of impending flight. You're really okay with all this? With them? With them? Yes. With how they bulldozed over your feelings today, no. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. But we'll set things straight together. Together. The words settled me, a reminder that whatever came next, I wasn't facing it alone. Downstairs had transformed in our absence. Someone, likely my practical father, had organized the chaos into something more manageable. The crowd had been directed to the backyard and enclosed patio where tables of food were set up. Inside, only immediate family and a few close friends remained, their expressions a mixture of concern and lingering excitement. James kept his arm firmly around my waist as we descended the stairs. My brothers stood in a protective semicircle at the bottom, their wives hovering anxiously behind them. You okay, Abs? Michael asked, using my childhood nickname. I nodded, feeling oddly formal with my own family. I'm sorry for the dramatic exit. We didn't know, Anthony said quickly, about you wanting to keep it quiet. I mean, Mom just said you had news, and we should help make it special. It's not your fault, I assured him. It was a misunderstanding. Vincent, always the most volatile of my brothers, looked less willing to let it go. You've known for 3 months and didn't tell any of us. We're family, Abby. Vincent, my father warned quietly, and my youngest brother subsided, though his expression remained hurt. Maria, Michael's wife, stepped forward with a gentle smile. However it happened, we're all so happy for you, Abby. Being a mother is the most amazing experience. The most exhausting too, added Rebecca with a laugh, gesturing to where her twins were systematically dismantling a flower arrangement, but worth every second. Their genuine warmth made me feel guilty for my earlier thoughts about them. Yes, motherhood had consumed their identities in ways I found concerning, but they were also genuinely happy. Who was I to judge their choices? So, my father said, practical, as always, we have about 80 people outside who came to celebrate. What would you like to do? I looked at James, who nodded encouragingly. I think, I said slowly, we should thank them for coming. They meant well. Before we go out there, my mother said, I want to show you something. She gestured toward the dining room. Curious, I followed her, with James and the others trailing behind. The dining room had been transformed into what could only be described as a baby shrine. Alongside the expected gifts and decorations was a display that made my throat tighten. Photographs of pregnant women in our family through generations. Starting with a sepia-toned image of my great-grandmother, every Moretti woman, my mother explained softly, from your Biznanaz mother to Rebecca with the twins last year. It's our family's journey of motherhood. I studied the images, solemn faces from the early 1900s giving way to increasingly joyful expressions in more recent decades. My own mother, round with Vincent, beaming at the camera. Maria surrounded by Michael's sisters at her baby shower. Rebecca in the hospital with the twins. This is beautiful, I admitted. Thank you for including me in this tradition. Of course, my mother said. You're a Moretti woman. This is your heritage. She hesitated, then added more softly, but I understand now that you need to find your own path in this journey. It was wrong of us to take over your announcement. The sincerity in her voice moved me. Thank you for understanding. My attention was drawn to a table laden with gifts, far more than seemed reasonable for a pregnancy announcement. People have been buying things since the moment they heard, my mother explained, following my gaze. Your Aunt Rosa brought that handmade blanket all the way from New York. Mrs. Janelli knitted those booties herself. Even with her arthritis, everyone wanted to contribute something. I picked up the tiny booties, suddenly overwhelmed by the tangible evidence of how many people already loved this child I was carrying. For all my frustration with the boundary violations, there was something undeniably beautiful about a community so eager to welcome a new life. Come see what Nana made, Michael said, leading us toward a corner where a sheet-draped object stood. My grandfather, approaching 90 but still skilled with his woodworking tools, pulled away the sheet to reveal an exquisitely crafted wooden cradle. For the bambino, he said simply, his accent still thick after 60 years in America. Nano, it's magnificent. I breathed, running my fingers over the smooth wood. When did you even have time to make this? Started the day your Nona and I got the call, he said proudly. Worked day and night. The call from 3 days ago, James whispered in my ear, and I bit back a hysterical laugh. My family moved with impressive efficiency when babies were involved. As we admired the cradle, I became aware of the murmur of conversations from family members scattered around the house. They were trying to be discreet, But in typical Moretti fashion, their whispers carried. Poor Abby, she seemed so upset. Do you think the father didn't want everyone to know? In my day, you'd be thrilled to have family support. These young people, and their privacy. James squeezed my hand, silently asking if I was okay. I nodded, finding that the comments bothered me less than they would have an hour ago, perhaps because I'd finally spoken my truth to my mother. Or perhaps because the genuine love behind the misguided surprise was becoming clearer. My cousin Teresa approached, her expression sympathetic. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I get it. When I was pregnant with Sophia, the family opinions nearly drove me crazy. Everyone had advice about everything from what I ate to how I should sleep. How did you handle it? I asked, surprised by this alliance from an unexpected quarter. She smiled wryly. Not as bravely as you just did. I mostly smiled and nodded, then did whatever I wanted anyway. But it was exhausting. It shouldn't have to be that way, I said. No, she agreed. It shouldn't. Maybe you'll change things for the next generation. As more relatives approached with congratulations and stories, I began to see nuances I'd missed before. Yes, there were the overwhelming boundary-crossing elements I'd always chafed against. But there was also genuine wisdom in many of their experiences, support I might actually want as pregnancy progressed, traditions worth preserving alongside new boundaries. James was deep in conversation with my father and Uncle Tony about something that involved enthusiastic hand gestures. Despite the rocky start, he seemed to be finding his footing with my family. I watched as he laughed at something, Uncle Tony said, his shoulders more relaxed than they'd been since we arrived. He's a good one, my brother Michael said, following my gaze. Stood up to all three of us defending your honor, and didn't back down for Mom either. That takes guts. He is the best thing that ever happened to me, I said simply. Michael nodded. We can see that. Just don't shut us out, Abs. We want to be part of this journey with you. Not controlling it, just present for it. His unexpected insight made me look at him more carefully. When did you get so wise? He grinned. Probably around the time Maria threatened to leave me if I didn't stop letting Mom dictate how we raised our kids. She did. I was shocked. Gentle Maria had always seemed to embrace the Moretti family involvement wholeheartedly. Oh yeah, about 2 years in. Said she'd had enough of feeling like a surrogate for Mom's fourth child instead of our first. Mother, he shrugged. We had some tough conversations. Set some boundaries. It got better. I stared at him. Why didn't I know about this? You were establishing your independence in Chicago. We didn't want to burden you with family drama. He smiled ruefully. Plus, it's not exactly something Mom wanted broadcast. But you should know, you're not the first to need some space from the Moretti avalanche. You're just the first brave enough to say it publicly. This revelation shifted something fundamental in my understanding of our family dynamics. Perhaps I wasn't as alone in my feelings as I'd always believed. Perhaps change was possible, even in a family as set in its traditions as ours. The backyard was a sea of familiar and semi-familiar faces when we finally emerged from the house. A momentary hush fell as people noticed us, followed by an enthusiastic wave of congratulations. I gripped James's hand tightly, feeling simultaneously overwhelmed and touched by the genuine joy directed our way. My mother had insisted on preceding us to prepare everyone, which apparently meant instructing the entire gathering to respect our feelings and not overwhelm us with advice or questions. Given the immediately offered advice and questions, her speech had limited impact, but the thought counted for something. After half an hour of accepting congratulations and fielding increasingly personal inquiries about my pregnancy symptoms, due date, and birthing plans, I needed another break. I caught James's eye across the yard, where he was trapped in conversation with 3 of my male cousins. And he gave me a subtle nod, our pre-established signal that escape was necessary. I'm just going to get some water, I told Aunt Lucia, who was mid-story about her own labor with cousin Marco 40 years earlier. I slipped away before she could follow, ducking into the kitchen where I found unexpected solitude. Or so I thought. Hiding too, came a voice from the corner. My sister, Rebecca, sat at the small breakfast table, a sleeping twin on her shoulder and a glass of wine in her free hand. Taking a breather, I admitted, it's a lot. She laughed softly. Welcome to motherhood, Moretti style. This is just the beginning. I hesitated, then decided to be honest. Earlier, I said some things to my mom about how I've seen motherhood change the women in this family, including you and Maria. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Oh, do tell. It wasn't a criticism, I hastened to add. I've noticed how completely your identities seem to have been subsumed by motherhood, how everything becomes about the children. The family, with nothing left for yourselves. I expected defensiveness. Instead, Rebecca took a long sip of her wine. You're not wrong, she said finally. The first year with the twins, I completely lost myself. Between the sleep deprivation, the constant visitors, Anthony's mother stopping by daily with opinions disguised as help, I had a breakdown when they were 8 months old. You did this, was another revelation I'd somehow missed. She nodded, full on sobbing on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., telling Anthony I couldn't do it anymore, couldn't be the perfect Moretti mother everyone expected. What happened? Anthony finally stood up to his mother for one thing, and I started seeing a therapist who helped me reclaim parts of myself beyond twin mom. She adjusted the sleeping child on her shoulder. I love these little monsters more than life, but I also need to be Rebecca sometimes, not just mama. The kitchen door swung open as James entered, looking relieved to find me. Your cousin Franco wants to know if we've considered circumcision yet, he said with wide eyes. I wasn't prepared for that level of conversation with someone I met 20 minutes ago. Rebecca laughed. Boundary violations are the family specialty, but Abby, you should know, what you did today. Standing up for yourself, it matters. Not just for you, but for all of us. It doesn't feel very brave, I admitted, more like I ruined everyone's celebration. Sometimes disruption is necessary for growth, she said, sounding like the psychology professor she'd been before the twins. This family loves hard, but not always wisely. We could use more honest conversations about boundaries. James sat beside me, his steady presence a comfort. Your mother is heading this way with determination, he warned. And she has reinforcements. Sure enough, the kitchen door opened again to admit my mother, Natalie, and Maria. The small room was quickly becoming crowded. Abigail, my mother began, her tone suggesting she'd been practicing this speech. I've been thinking about what you said upstairs, about feeling overwhelmed and afraid of losing yourself. I braced for defensiveness or dismissal, but instead, she continued with surprising vulnerability. When I was pregnant with Michael, I was terrified, she admitted. My mother and sisters took over everything, the nursery preparations, the shower, even my doctor's appointments. I felt like a vessel, not a person. Sound familiar? I nodded, stunned by this insight into my mother's experience. The difference was, I never spoke up, she continued. I never set boundaries. I let the family traditions continue unquestioned, and then I perpetuated them with my own daughters-in-law. She glanced apologetically at Maria and Rebecca. And now with you, Mom. She held up her hand. Let me finish. You've always been different from the rest of us, Abigail. More independent, more contained. I've never fully understood it, but I've always admired your strength, your courage, to forge your own path. Tears pricked my eyes at this unexpected validation. What I'm trying to say is, I'm proud of you for speaking your truth today, even though it hurt to hear it, even though it disrupted what I thought was a perfect surprise. She took my hands in hers. I want to do better, to support you in the way you need, not just in the way I know how to give. The kitchen had gone quiet, everyone watching this unprecedented moment of maternal flexibility in the Moretti matriarch. Thank you, I managed, through the lump in my throat. That means everything to me. Maria stepped forward. And I want you to know, whatever you saw in my motherhood journey that scared you, it's okay. We all do this differently. I actually love having family involved, but that doesn't mean you have to. I thought you all would think I was ungrateful, I admitted, for rejecting the family way. Honey, no, Maria said, squeezing my arm. We just want you to be happy, however that looks for you. The kitchen door swung open yet again, and my brothers filed in, followed by my father. The small space was now absurdly overcrowded. But somehow it felt right. All the key players in this family drama gathered in the heart of the home. Is this an intervention? Vincent asked, only half joking. It's a reset, my father said firmly. Abby and James are going to be parents on their own terms. Our job is to support them, not direct them. My brothers exchanged glances, clearly processing this paradigm shift. We can do that, Michael said finally, always the first to adapt. Anthony nodded. Whatever you need, Abs. Vincent looked less convinced, but nodded anyway. As long as we get to be uncles to this kid. Real uncles, not distant Chicago uncles who only appear on holidays. Of course, James said, surprising. Me by addressing my brothers directly. We want this child to know their family. We just need to find the right balance. Speaking of balance, Natalie interjected. There are still about 70 people in the backyard waiting to properly celebrate this baby. Maybe we should rejoin them with this new understanding. She was right. As cathartic as this kitchen confession session had been, we had guests waiting. Guests who had come with genuine love and excitement, however misguided the execution. Before we go back out, James said suddenly, looking nervous, there's something I'd like to say. All eyes turned to him, and I felt a flutter of concern at his serious expression. I had a different plan for this weekend, he began. A private dinner, a walk by the harbor where we first met when you visited Boston last year, a ring in my pocket. He glanced apologetically at me. Not exactly how I imagined this moment, but today has taught me that sometimes you have to adapt. My heart stopped as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to do this after we told her family about the baby, he continued. But since that cat is thoroughly out of the bag, he dropped to one knee in the crowded kitchen, surrounded by my entire immediate family. Abigail Moretti, will you marry me? The kitchen erupted in gasps and exclamations. My mother actually clutched her chest. My brothers looked torn between excitement and residual protectiveness, but all I could see was James steady, understanding, James looking up at me with love and certainty despite the chaos of the day. The family. Everything. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how sure I felt, despite my earlier fears. Absolutely yes. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, a delicate vintage design that perfectly suited my taste. Cheers erupted not just from the kitchen but from beyond, suggesting that the backyard crowd had somehow become aware of what was happening. Did someone announce that? I asked, laughing through happy tears. Aunt Rosa was peeking through the window, Rebecca explained, pointing to where my aunt's face was indeed pressed against the glass. Her phone held up to broadcast the moment to those outside. Some things about the Moretti family would never change, but maybe, just maybe, we could evolve together. The remainder of that evening unfolded with a strange new balance. The backyard celebration continued, but with a subtle shift in dynamics. Word of our kitchen confrontation and reconciliation had somehow spread through the party. I suspected Aunt Rosa's efficient information network creating an atmosphere of greater consideration. Relatives still offered advice and stories, but many now prefaced them with "if you're interested," or "this worked for us." But everyone's different. It was a small change, but significant, the first acknowledgement that there might be multiple valid approaches to family and parenthood in the Moretti universe. James moved through the crowd with increasing confidence. No longer the outsider but the fiancé, the father-to-be, a soon-to-be, official member of the clan. I watched with pride as he charmed my ancient Nonna with his honest attempts at Italian phrases and held his own in a spirited debate about baseball with my uncles. He's fitting in better than I expected, my father commented, appearing at my side with a plate of food. Eat something, you're feeding too now. I accepted the plate gratefully. He's adaptably and genuinely interested in people, even overwhelming Italian people. My father chuckled. We are a lot to take in, all at once. Your mother and I should have considered that more carefully before allowing this. He gestured at the crowded yard, explosion of family. It's okay, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Today was messy, but necessary. We've needed this conversation for years. You know, he said thoughtfully, when you moved to Chicago, your mother cried for a week. Not because she wasn't proud of you, but because she felt she was losing you. The distance wasn't just physical. I hadn't known that. I needed space to become myself. Papa, without everyone's expectations and opinions shaping every decision. I understood that better than your mother, he admitted. Maybe because I grew up with a father whose expectations were impossible to meet. I wanted different for my children, but family patterns are hard to break. This glimpse into my father's perspective, something he rarely shared, felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Our conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the dessert table. My cousin Jessica, who I'd always liked but never been particularly close to, was defending me to Aunt Lucia, who apparently hadn't fully embraced the new boundary respecting ethos. If Abby doesn't want to share her birth plan with the entire family, that's her right, Jessica was saying firmly. Times have changed, Aunt Lucia. Young parents deserve privacy. In my day, we valued family wisdom. Aunt Lucia sniffed, and we still do, Jessica countered. But it's Abby's pregnancy, Abby's baby. Abby's choice, how much to share, and with whom. I moved toward them, touched by Jessica's unexpected advocacy. Thank you, I said, joining their circle. I do value family wisdom, Aunt Lucia. I just need to process it in my own way, on my own timeline. Aunt Lucia looked skeptical, but nodded reluctantly. Your mother was exactly the same way with Michael, you know? Thought she knew better than everyone. Then the baby came and suddenly she couldn't get enough advice. This recurring theme, that my mother had once been in my position, continued to surprise me. The image I'd always had of her as the ultimate traditional family matriarch was being revised with each new revelation. Jessica stayed by my side after Aunt Lucia moved on. I've always admired how you carved out your own path, she said. The family can be a lot. It's been a journey, I acknowledged. Today especially. Listen, she said, lowering her voice. I know we haven't been super close, but I'm starting a mother's group that's specifically not about doing things the traditional way. We're exploring everything from home births to co-parenting arrangements. If you're interested, we meet virtually, so you could join from Chicago. You're pregnant too? I asked, surprised. She laughed. No, but I'm a doula now, alongside my regular job. It's my passion project supporting women in having the birth and parenting experience they want. Not what tradition dictates. I'd like that, I said sincerely. Thank you. As the evening progressed, more such connections emerged. Cousins I'd written off as fully assimilated into them already. Hive mind revealed their own small rebellions and adaptations. My brother Anthony pulled me aside to share tips on how he and Rebecca had established boundaries without alienating the family. Even my grandmother, matriarch of the original generation, told me a surprising story about defying her own mother-in-law's expectations when raising my father. The family I'd seen as a monolithic force of tradition was revealing itself to be more nuanced, more adaptable than I'd given it credit for. Yes, the Moretti way was loud, involved, and often overwhelming, but it wasn't impervious to change. By the time the party began to wind down, I felt a subtle but significant shift in my relationship with my family, not a complete transformation. That would take time and consistent effort on all sides, but the beginning of a new understanding. James found me as I was saying goodbye to departing relatives. Holding up, okay, he asked quietly, his arms sliding around my waist. Better than I expected, I admitted. My family is evolving. I can see that, he said. Your brother Vincent just invited me to his fantasy football league, which I think means I'm officially accepted. I laughed. That's practically a blood oath in Moretti terms. As the last guests departed, leaving only immediate family, my mother approached with an uncertain smile. So, she said, this wasn't the day any of us expected. No, I agreed, but maybe it was the day we needed. She nodded, then surprised me by asking, what would you have wanted? If you could have planned your own announcement. The question, her genuine interest in my preferences rather than assuming her way was best, felt like a breakthrough. Something smaller, I said, honestly. Just immediate family. Maybe dinner at that Italian restaurant we all love near the harbor. Simple, intimate. My mother nodded thoughtfully. We could still do that, you know. Tomorrow night, a do-over. Of sorts. I'd like that, I said, touched by her offer. And the engagement, she added. James told us he had planned something special before our enthusiasm derailed things. James smiled. The ring is on her finger. That's what matters most. But I did have reservations at Bella Vista for Sunday. Those reservations still stand. My father said. We called and confirmed while you two were talking with the Capo Greco cousins. A proper celebration, just the immediate family. This gesture, respecting our original plans while incorporating them into the new reality, meant more than any elaborate party could have. As we helped clean up the remnants of the surprise-turned-reconciliation party, I found myself standing with James in the kitchen, watching my family work together in their typical chaotic but effective fashion. So, he said quietly, not exactly how we planned to tell them about the baby or get engaged. Not even close, I agreed with a laugh. Any regrets? He asked, and I heard the genuine question beneath the lightness of his tone. I considered the data shock, the confrontation, the painful but necessary conversations, and the unexpected connections and understandings that had emerged. No, I said finally. It was messy and overwhelming, and exactly what this family needed. What I needed, even though I didn't know it. He kissed my temple. That's my brave girl, taking on the entire Moretti clan and somehow ending up with everyone loving you even more. And you? I asked. Any second thoughts about joining this chaos permanently? He looked around at my brothers, arguing good-naturedly about the proper way to stack leftovers. My mother instructing my father on the correct dishwasher loading technique while he pretended not to hear. My grandparents bickering lovingly in mixed Italian and English. "Are you kidding?" he said with a smile. "I always wanted a big family. I just didn't know they'd come all at once in a package deal with the woman I love." In that moment, surrounded by the beautiful chaos of my family, with James's steady presence beside me and our baby growing within, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude for the very aspects of my family I'd been fighting against. Their overwhelming love, their passionate involvement, their refusal to keep emotions small and tidy. These were the same qualities that had allowed us to navigate today's conflict and emerge closer. We had a long way to go in establishing the right boundaries, in creating our own family traditions while honoring the best of the Moretti legacy. But for the first time, I believed it was possible. The welcome baby banner still hung in the living room, slightly askew after the day's events. Looking at it now, it no longer felt like an ambush, but a promise. A community ready to love this child, even as they learned to respect the parents' wishes. Welcome, indeed. 3 months later, we gathered again in my parents' home. This time, the crowd was deliberately smaller, just immediate family and a few close friends. My mother had adhered to our agreed guest list with only minimal negotiation, but Aunt Rosa came all the way from New York last time. She'll be heartbroken too. Missed the official shower. At 26 weeks pregnant, my rounded belly now made the news unmistakable. I wore a simple blue dress that James said brought out my eyes. And the engagement ring caught the light as I accepted hugs and more restrained congratulations from our select guests. The change in family dynamics over the past 3 months hadn't been instant or complete, but it had been steady. Weekly video calls with my mother now included a mutual respect I never thought possible. She still offered advice, but prefaced it with "you might consider" rather than "you must." I, in turn, had learned to share more of my pregnancy journey, finding unexpected comfort in her experience once it was offered rather than imposed. My father had taken to sending short, practical emails with links to articles about everything from car seat safety to college savings plans, always with the same closing line: "Take what's useful, ignore the rest. Love, Papa." This approach suited us both perfectly. The baby shower my mother and Natalie had planned together, with my input this time, struck the perfect balance between traditional Moretti exuberance and the more contained celebration James and I preferred. Games were minimal and not embarrassing. Gifts were practical rather than excessive. The food was still abundant. Some aspects of Italian-American hospitality were non-negotiable. James had found his place within the family ecosystem with surprising ease. My brothers had moved from suspicious interrogation to genuine friendship, especially after James proved himself worthy during an impromptu football game in the snow during our Christmas visit. Vincent had even asked James to be godfather to his newborn son, an honor that symbolized full acceptance into the inner circle. "How are you feeling?" my mother asked, joining me on the couch where I'd taken a brief rest from socializing. Her question was genuine, not the prelude to unsolicited advice it might have been in the past. "Good," I said honestly. "Tired sometimes, but good. The second trimester is definitely easier than the first." She nodded. "It was the same for me with all 4 of you. Like emerging from a fog." She hesitated, then added, "I've been meaning to show you something. Wait here." She disappeared upstairs, returning moments later with a worn leather journal. "I kept this when I was pregnant with Michael," she explained, handing it to me, and added sections during each subsequent pregnancy. I opened it carefully, finding pages filled with my mother's distinctive handwritten thoughts, fears, joys, and questions as she navigated impending motherhood. "You wrote about feeling overwhelmed by family expectations," I said, scanning an entry from early in her first pregnancy, about wanting space to process becoming a mother. She smiled ruefully. "As I told you that day, we're not so different. You and I just never found the courage to set the boundaries you have." "Why? Show me this now," I asked, touched by her vulnerability. "Because I want you to know that I understand more than you realized. And because," she took a deep breath, "I want you to feel free to define motherhood on your own terms, even when that means departing from how I did things." The journal felt heavy with significance in my hands. "Thank you for this," I said softly. "It means everything." Across the room, James was deep in conversation with my father, their heads bent over what appeared to be building plans. Since our engagement, My father had taken James under his wing, sharing his construction knowledge as they collaborated on plans for the nursery in our Chicago apartment. "They're discussing the bookshelf design again," my mother observed with affection. "Your father has redesigned it 3 times already." "James loves it," I said. "He never had this growing up, the big family project, everyone contributing." "And you?" she asked carefully. "Is it still too much sometimes?" I considered the question honestly. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I'm learning to say when I need space, and you're all learning to hear it. We're finding balance." She patted my hand. "That's all any family can hope for." The shower continued with a gentleness I wouldn't have thought possible from the Moretti clan 6 months earlier. Rebecca's twins played quietly with building blocks in the corner, occasionally supervised by whichever adult was nearest, a communal approach to childcare that actually felt supportive rather than intrusive. Maria shared her experiences with natural childbirth when I expressed interest, but added, though my sister went fully medicated and had an equally beautiful experience, "There's no one right way." Even Aunt Lucia, traditionally the most judgmental of the extended family, limited herself to one comment about modern mothers being too independent, before my mother smoothly redirected her to help arrange the dessert table. As gifts were opened and admired, I noticed how carefully chosen each one was. Practical items from our registry rather than the excessive, often duplicate presents that had characterized previous family baby showers. My brothers had gone in together on the stroller system we'd researched, while Natalie gifted a series of prenatal massage appointments for when your back really starts to ache. When the last gift had been unwrapped and properly appreciated, my mother signaled to my father, who wheeled in a large object covered with a sheet. "We have one more thing," she said, "from all of us." My father removed the sheet to reveal the cradle my grandfather had made, now enhanced with a beautiful hand-painted design along the sides, delicate vines and small birds in flight. "I added the painting," my mother explained. "Your grandmother sewed the bedding. Your brothers built the stand that makes it rock, and Jessica selected these." She indicated small crystals embedded in the wood at each corner, "for protection and peaceful sleep," she says. "It's a family project," my father added, "but one that respects your aesthetic and preferences." We looked at the nursery design plans you shared. The cradle was beautiful, traditional in structure but with modern elements that perfectly suited our style. Moreover, it represented exactly what I'd hoped for: family involvement that enhanced rather than overwhelmed our vision. "It's perfect," I said, tears welling. "Absolutely perfect." As the shower wound down and guests began to depart, James and I found ourselves in the backyard enjoying a moment of quiet together. The late spring air carried the scent of my mother's herb garden, and the setting sun cast everything in a golden glow. "So," he said, his hand resting gently on my rounded belly, "baby girl Moretti Sullivan has quite the welcome committee waiting for her." We had learned the gender 2 weeks earlier and shared it with family in a simple phone call. No elaborate gender reveal party, just straightforward joy at the news of a daughter. "She does," I agreed. A slightly overwhelming but one. "Are you glad we told them?" Despite the rocky start, I thought about the journey of the past 6 months, the painful confrontations, the honest conversations, the gradual rebuilding of relationships on more authentic foundations. "Yes," I said with certainty. "It was necessary. Not just for this pregnancy, but for our future as a family. Our daughter will know what it means to be loved abundantly by her extended family, but also what it means to have boundaries and self-determination. The best of both worlds," James agreed. My mother appeared at the back door, waving a container. "Leftovers for you to take back to the hotel. And I've packed some of those cookies you've been craving." I laughed. "Some things never change, and shouldn't," James said, squeezing my hand. "That's what makes it family." As we prepared to leave, loaded down with gifts, food, and the precious cradle carefully secured in my father's truck to be delivered to Chicago next weekend, no arguments. "I'm driving it myself. Airline cargo would damage it." I took a final look around the home that had shaped me. The welcome baby banner from that chaotic first announcement had been repurposed, now hanging more modestly in the dining room, alongside photographs from our more intimate celebration. It seemed a fitting symbol of our family's evolution, the same love and excitement, expressed with new awareness and respect. My mother hugged me tightly at the door. "Call when you get back to Chicago safely," she said. Then added with a smile, "But not if it's after 10 p.m. I know you need your rest." This small acknowledgement of boundaries, so simple yet once unimaginable from my mother, meant everything. In the car driving back to our hotel, James asked, "Happy?" "Very," I said, resting my hand on my belly, where our daughter had just delivered a solid kick. "It's not perfect. There will still be boundary crossings and difficult conversations. But we're building something beautiful here. A bridge between traditions and new beginnings." "Just like that cradle," he observed. "Traditional structure, modern details." "Exactly like that," I agreed. "A perfect metaphor for the family we're creating." As we drove through the familiar streets of my hometown, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey from that shocking moment in the doorway, seeing 81 expectant faces beneath a welcome baby banner, to today's balanced celebration had been transformative, not just for me, but for my entire family. Sometimes the most painful confrontations lead to the most necessary growth. Sometimes a surprise party that goes terribly wrong can be the catalyst for relationships that become wonderfully right. And, sometimes, just sometimes, you can go home again, not to the home you left, but to one that has evolved alongside you, creating space for both roots and wings. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family who mean well but overwhelm you? How did you navigate that delicate balance between honoring traditions and creating your own path? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might be struggling with their own family dynamics. Remember, loving boundaries create stronger relationships. Thank you for listening to my story.